Hey everybody, Mark Arinsberg here with The Purenow Show. This is episode number 18. My guest today is Olivia Cheung. Olivia is a producer and content creator with an effervescent personality and a perpetual smile on her face, doing all kinds of community building work through public art projects while working with top creative professionals, producing work at the highest level. Here we go. Hey, Liv.
Hi. How you going, Mark?
It's all good, Liv. So nice to have you on the Purenow Show. Really appreciate you taking some time to chat with me and talk about you and all the very cool stuff you do.
Yeah, I mean, cool is subjective, but I can definitely say they're fun for me and hopefully people involved. But yeah, excited to chat with you about it.
Yeah, I don't know how subjective it is. I've looked at your work and it's cool. There's no question the projects that you have are unilaterally super high quality. You can tell that you've had the great pleasure to work with very talented directors and DPs and writers and artists and all kinds of really fantastic people. So it must be a pleasure to do what you do when you have the opportunity to work with such fantastic people.
Oh yeah, I think the joys of being a freelance creative producer, it means I get to go into so many different worlds. And yeah, I'm kind of a bit of a free spirit, so I sort of let my intuition guide me, as well as just looking at what's relevant in the world and what's needed right now. So I sort of let that dictate the projects that I get involved with as a producer. So yeah, I've been involved in high-end TV commercials, film features, to sort of low budget end, but just really impactful stories from independent filmmakers on the film side. And then I've got my other side, hustles, and you know, I'm just doing lots of random things really, just sort of getting the most out of life. I think the main drive and interest is just people's stories. I think the human connection and soul and people's journeys, I think I'm the most interested in. And so how to express that and share that story in a creative way is what I guess what I'm here to do.
Well, it's a thread through everything that you've produced. It's a narrative all the way through. Even the TVCs have an interesting narrative. Nothing is predictable. It's all interesting. And the last thing I watched was the Movember, the mustache painter dudes, and yeah. You know what? I'm a huge fan of comedy, and I think a harsh critic of comedy, frankly. And that's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It's really a brilliantly acted, produced, art directed, you name it. Every aspect, the writing is really fantastic. I mean, even the campaign, of course, it's a juxtaposition of beside, not behind. There's such strong messaging. Even if it's funny, there's strong messaging in all your pieces, and you can feel your passion come through that again, you're working with talented people, and you obviously attract that. It's part of your personality and who you are, and you know, we gravitate towards, you know, like-minded people and people that are interested in accomplishing maybe similar goals in different ways. And again, I see that as a thread through your work, and it was super fun to go through all your stuff.
Thank you. I feel really flattered that you've gone through all my work. And it's really interesting because I think as a producer, I'm there to support a lot of other creative visions, but as well being a creative myself. But it's nice when you sort of put all your work out there and to have someone with just fresh eyes look on it and see a theme, the passion and social advocacy that is really important in the work that I choose to be a part of. It's nice that it shows, because that is definitely something that I align myself with and definitely try to, especially having done the hard yards, working up in production, but now sort of at a stage where I can have a choice to choose the projects that I'm working on. So yeah, I feel really privileged to be where I'm at now.
There's nothing better than working with people who are incredibly talented, and to usher that, to be that facilitator, to bring it all together to help people get their vision out there and get things made. And you know, that's not an easy task, to assemble all the pieces and keep everybody happy and make sure everybody has what they need, want, and that the end result is good for everybody, and not just everybody in the project, but those who are going to experience that experience in some way. The world is pretty challenging right now. Not that it hasn't always been, but it's exceptionally challenging now. And it's great to make these statements, these necessary conveyances of messages about not tolerance, but appreciation. I mean, we're beyond we can't tolerate anymore. That's weak. We must mutually appreciate and enjoy this diversity and take advantage of the opportunity that we all bring to the table. And I see that a lot of your work is bringing that messaging out. How did you end up, one, getting into producing? You grew up in Australia, correct?
Yeah.
You've got the trifecta. You're Chinese, living in Australia, you're a woman, all these interesting components to who you are, which can be very challenging, I would imagine. I mean, I'm not really familiar with the Australian culture, but the fact that you have all these diverse aspects to you as just a human being, and then being in a male-dominated industry to begin with, and then just a male-dominated world, and that you've carved your way through working hard and showing what you can do, and then to produce these pieces that are very conscious-minded. And give me an idea of your path, how that started as a young person that puts you on this high-minded path to getting involved with making the world a better place.
Oh wow, that is a big life question. I love it, Mark. Straight in. How to sum it up, I say, in a few minutes.
You can take all the minutes you want, man. I know that's a big question, and your path started, I'm sure, early, so.
Yeah. Wow. You know how your life flashes past you and you're just like, where do I start? I guess for me, it's interesting what you mentioned about the trifecta. I guess did I realize it was going to be a hard path in front, heading into advertising and media and being, like you said, a woman of color. To be honest, like these terms are sort of just, I think, much more spoken now in the current climate. But when I was growing up, not really. I think I understood that I lived in many worlds and I never fitted in one world, you could say. Growing up in Australia, growing up in in a pretty Caucasian surrounding, Western surrounding, but then going home to a very Chinese family with Chinese culture and values. And my parents instilling in me, like, how many Asian faces do you see on television? None, and that's how I ended up working in Asia for about 7 years. I worked in Hong Kong, Japan, China, Singapore, and all over. But that was in my 20s, so I'm going to go back and forth, but that's kind of my life. It's not very chronological, it's a bit everywhere. But I think I just saw it as, one of these typical globalized third culture kids where I could sort of have my foot in every door, but never be maybe fully in one door. But I think it allowed me to sort of step into these communities and never really come across as a threat. And I guess, I don't know, I could think about how people perceived me, but I was just sort of wandering in and out of these worlds as a curious being and always curious about these cultures and these communities that I was stepping into the world to, and really respectful of where they've come from and then trying to find my place in it. So I think that's always been a guiding thing for me, even in my career. And I think I grew roots in my high school. Everyone's had different high school formative experiences, but in this particular high school, leadership and participation was a really big thing. I did have a choice to go to a selective school, which was probably predominantly Asian culture. And I had like 2 weeks, I remember. I was in year 9 and I was like trying to decide, and there was the academic path. Not that my current school wasn't, or I could stay in this school where they really pride themselves of being a part of the community, being a part of all these different initiatives. And so I don't know, I was kind of torn, but I ended up choosing to stay with my current school. And it was there I sort of flourished and kind of became a school captain. And in particular, I was like school captain of the arts. And so I was responsible for the music and for the visual arts and just ran a whole lot of things. I remember going to school and I was like rapping this speech. Like I just burst into my school principal's office and I was rapping about like the arts festival that was coming up and getting people involved. I was graffitiing the school. So I think a lot of these things started from, quite a young age in my teenage years. At the same time, I had my eyes set on New York, and I thought, okay, I was really passionate about acting. I wanted to get, over to New York and to LA. But then I remember at 16, I watched a documentary on child soldiers in Uganda. It was called Invisible Children. And I broke down. It really affected me as a young teen, just I guess, you're born in Australia, in an affluent country, and so realizing the inequalities of the world. And I was like, I just can't just go to, Hollywood and pursue my own dreams. Like there's people suffering. And so I ended up joining a youth aid organisation, and it was the first youth-run organisation in Australia called Oaktree Foundation. It was started by just a bunch of teens. Whoever started it, he actually runs the Global Poverty Project in New York, which brings a lot of celebrities, and they have these big advocacy aid concerts now. It's quite big, but Hugh had started this youth aid organisation and asked me to join. And it was kind of a mixture of these things, like school and doing arts, but also volunteering. And I volunteered for about 5-6 years, and it was there I sort of met my tribe and young people who really cared about making a difference. But also, I think what was important for me was also having fun and being part of life. And so a lot of these strong rooted values, which I still carry with me today as a producer, in my work, as a human being, I think stemmed from a lot of those experiences in my formative teen years. I ended up from that organisation organising a anti-poverty concert where Bono, U2, they all came, all of Australia's big artists came, and I think just as a youth-run small organisation, we had this like 30,000 people at this concert in 2006, and yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing to be part of people who really believed in a vision, being part of a tribe, and I think that has always given me the drive to seek, I guess, these projects that have something that's bigger than just yourself. And that's also in the work that that I've produced as well. I ended up a couple of years in South Africa. I was volunteering in the townships. That was one chapter of my life. Came back. Parents are like, how many Asian faces do you see in television? Like, how much money have you wasted away, like volunteering? Why don't you go over to Asia and like try, get into your career and get some work experience? And I went to Hong Kong, and I ended up working there and starting my career off as a production coordinator. And then ended up being a film fixer, bumped into a New York crew that was doing this big Starbucks ad, and like, can you find 20 monks drinking Starbucks, in Jeddah? I was like, I actually just met somebody. And so I combined my love for travel and meeting people, finding new locations. So it kind of naturally came to me, that producing role, just that open-heartedness and just like getting things done. And that's how I fell into, I guess, production and film. So I spent 4 years there, came back, went to Singapore. That's when I met HaiHa as well, and was at Chimney. I did do a little stint in Germany as well. So I've kind of had a very international, broad experience doing lots of things, and been a producer for about 12, 13 years now. And then, in the last couple of years in lockdown, especially in Melbourne, the most lockdown city in the world, I managed to tap into my own voice again, creative voice. I think for a long time, supporting a lot of directors, a lot of artists, and being really passionate about their work, I've sort of put my own creative voice aside. But when everything shut down, I was able to tap into it again and just listen in on that soft spoken voice that is just gentle, I think, in all of us, and whether we listen to it or not. And despite being in lockdown, I was able to, have a lot of hope and ideas for my community, even within my 5K zone. So I started this neighbourhood group and ran all these community arts initiatives just to keep people's spirits up in these really trying times. So that's been the last year in a very overview show, but a lot of beautiful things have come out of it, and I'm really grateful for, despite the terrible time we've all had and different experiences, it's highlighted, I think, a lot of things in our society and as well within myself personally. So I think it's a really good shift for change, and I'm really open to what's coming next. But unlike maybe other creatives, I haven't got a particular very direct ambition or goal, let's say. I'm really open to what the world is transforming and becoming, and questioning myself along with it, and what do I need to be to become who I need to be in the world, and then answering that. So that's a little bit about my journey.
Well, you're truly a receiver, man, because only receivers can give as much as you do. You've opted to just be available, and that's really a critical point, to be able to then redistribute whatever it is that you've become available for. And I could see like you're having a lot of fun. You know,
Yeah.
I want to go to Platypus Alley, and I love that art project that you're working on with the government assistance. And you've got a podcast that you're just starting with your partner.
Yeah.
I listened to the trailer. You're just having a good time, man.
Yeah.
And more power to you, because the more obviously that you do, the more impact and effect you have on others. So it's almost critical to not just your survival and happiness, but to others. And I would imagine that during this pandemic, which of course has created immense opportunity. I mean, tragedy is in the eyes of the beholder, just like beauty. So if it wasn't for that, you might not have been forced into this position of looking back at yourself and figuring out what kind of personal contribution that you want to make. You're listening to The Purenow Show, a creative podcast for creatives presented by Balance. So that's interesting that you've put some of these other things on hold for now after investing, a dozen years into that. And now you're kind of refilling with energy and doing it a little differently. Can you talk about some of these new projects going on right now?
Yeah, sure. So the podcast you were sharing about, so I just won a grant and it's to do this podcast called Half Ties. It's part of Multicultural Arts Victoria, and it's basically an idea that came out from I'll say conversation, or maybe an argument that my partner and I had. He's a composer. We met in London, and a musician, and he's half Finnish, half Ghanaian, and obviously me being Australian Chinese, and we always sort of talk about the things that we love about our culture and what we don't like about our culture and each other's cultures and whatnot. Then there's this prospect of future and potentially having kids, and what are they going to be like? Are they going to be so mixed up? What a mixed bag. And so what things are we going to teach them? And so it's quite interesting once you put yourself in that sort of parent headspace. I don't know if you have kids, Mark, but
I do. Yes.
Oh, there you go. I could probably learn a thing or two from you, let alone, mixed culture parents. And I'm like, why don't we speak to other people who've been doing this for way longer? So that was the idea. We did a little trailer, and I just recently got a grant for it. So that's in the works for next year. But I think it's fascinating. I think it's a great way to learn about other cultures. We're in such a mixed melting pot in the world, and especially in Australia. But, I think unless you have human interaction and a relationship with these people, it's sort of like you only know from what you read from the news or whatnot. So I think it's a chance for anybody to really engage with somebody from a different culture, and also learn from people who've been doing it for such a long time. So that's the podcast. So I'll let you know how that goes. And then what else? I've got a few things on the go. There is this council project that you touched on, Flash Forward. So I stepped out of film TV to work on this council project. It's a public art and music program, but we're basically reactivating the city with street art and music gigs, because Melbourne's been shut down for a long time. It's also to give money back to the arts, which has suffered so much in the last couple of years, and especially Melbourne being a big arts and culture hub. So it's giving work to creatives, it's bringing people back into the city, it's helping people engage with art, and I think that is an interesting area that I am personally exploring right now in my life. How to engage the public with art, and especially now as we consume so much as consumers, and like watching telly and film like online in this lockdown. But I think sometimes art can be quite elitist, and especially for the common person, not the common person, just like, people, I'm not creative, like I can't do art, or, I don't really understand this. It's like, as artists who've been doing it for a long time, as practitioners, how do we make it more accessible? And I think that's what this program is also about. It's about giving back to the city. It's about talking about these really important issues of our time, but making it accessible, and that's what art is. And so I feel really privileged to sort of step out of my film producing into this public art producing. It's something that I'm bringing in my own little neighbourhood. I started a neighbourhood group in my Waxman, it's called the Waxman Lockdown Group, and about 150 houses in my neighbourhood have joined since we had this 5K restriction. And I've just been running amok. Like, my mum's always like, who are you bothering now? Like, why are you, whose door are you knocking on now? I'm like, no, I'm just like sticking within the rules of my 5K zone. I'm just making friends with everybody. So yeah, just little things. I think everyone has untapped, and this might be a bit of a buzzword, but it's true, like creative potential and something inside them. And I see my role as to help coach that out. And I'm sure you do too, Mark, being a supporter and initiator. So I've run into a few different things, like neighborhood party. I'm doing this walking art gallery where I'm making use of the trees in our neighborhood. So when people are walking past, there'll be art hanging from it and getting people to engage and participate in art. And I think it's engaging in an open way to discuss the harder topics, as we're seeing online, are really polarizing. So that actually leads into my other thing that I'm doing called the Life Exchange. It's an online, at the moment it's online because of lockdown, but it's a conversation series. I'm inspired by things like Humans of New York, podcasts like Heavyweight, where we sort of unravel and uncover like the human psyche of fear and disconnect. And so I'm seeing a lot of polarization online about lots of various social topics, and the question for me in this last year or two is like, how do we bring people back together to have open discussions about things? And so this one is more of a, I guess, public performance art, I guess, in some way, but it's a conversation series where I bring elements of improv, elements of coaching and facilitation, and create this space where people from all walks of life, especially across generations, I think, we're all in our little silos and having our own conversations, and everyone's believing the same things that we're chatting about, but what about people from the other side? And so creating this space where people can engage on big life topics, and I sort of just throw out questions out there, maybe play a few games and get people to interact and engage with people that maybe they normally wouldn't in a safe space. So yeah, it's called the Life Exchange. I've actually got a session coming up this Sunday, and we're talking about guilt and pleasures, our relationship with money. There's a lot of artists coming to this one who work in their practice with money and art, but there's also a lot of finance people. So I think it's really interesting bringing these types of groups of people together. So yeah, anyway, those are just a few things.
Well, I think you touched on something that is maybe one of the primary conditions that is keeping us away from each other, which is, there's only a few people doing the art, and everybody else is a voyeur, and everybody is an artist. Everybody's creative. Even though people have this cliche of saying, oh, I'm not creative, it's because they were never nurtured or shown the way or given the opportunity. How could a handful of people be the creative ones? That's not true.
Yeah.
And so human beings are starving for human expression. And because they were never given the opportunity, they suffer. And I think that's part of our major disconnection, is that human beings are not equally expressing themselves in ways that they can be. I'm not going to should. I don't like shoulding people because I'm no authority on anything. But I definitely feel it is why we judge each other. It's why we're so angry. It's because we're disconnected from our form and function, our primary light, if you will, is just the essence of being a human being, and how that can translate into all kinds of internal and external expression. And you've been, of course, steeped in that. That's why I appreciate the public art project that you're doing. But it really is a matter of I think, giving people an opportunity, no matter whom they are. Because when you're doing art, as you know, there is no time and space. None of these manufactured constructs exist anymore. Your opinion of left or right or political correctness, all that disappears in the world of art. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant and it's not real. Expression is real. So high praise to you for getting involved with that and opening people's minds and their eyes and their hearts to the potential of interacting with each other in a much more conscious way, a more loving way. Because, you know, love is art, it's not fear. So everything else is fear-based for some reason. So along those lines, let's talk about some of the projects that you've worked on individually, because, you know, we have a lot of people who are watching the show that are, you know, fellow creative professionals in some capacity or another. And, you know, everybody's had an amazing project that they've worked on, and everybody's had the incredible nightmare project that they've worked on. And, you know, this creates contrast, so you know where you are in the situation. It's good to have these, the multitude of experiences so you can glean something from everything. Good and bad is just somebody's perception. Give me an idea of something that you worked on that was life-changing for you, that was, one of these projects that was unexpected and it added some real value to your life.
I mean, the first one that comes to mind is this independent public service announcement, or independent ad actually, the Beside Not Behind one that you mentioned. I was working in an agency full-time then, and usual agency life, working 12, 15 hours a day, busting your guts, working for clients that you don't really believe in, or their product and their messaging, but you just got to do it. You're a producer, that's what you do, that's what you've been hired to do, don't give your opinion kind of thing. And yeah, it was International Women's Day. I got asked by another creative director to produce an ad for gender equality, and obviously looking for a female producer, but all the creatives and writers were men, normal kind of vibe. And then when he asked me to reach out to a director, I said, well, you should definitely get a female director for this. And he'd written the script, and he said, yeah, but are there any out there? I was like, I didn't believe it. I was like, yeah, there are. And he's like, yeah, but are they any good? And I was just so furious. I just couldn't believe he said that. And he's been around for ages. And I was just like, what are you saying? And so I kind of got, that fire, got really angry. I don't get angry very much. I got very angry and kind of put a call out with my network with just female directors and filmmakers, and the freelance crew just came, and just there was just so much support. Not that I told that story and that's why, but I was like, we got to do something together, as women, we got to bond together, especially in this industry. And so I met Cassie DeColling, who's become a good friend of mine, and we wrote this script, and it was just all heart, just about, again, taking this quote, beside, not behind every man is a great woman, beside every woman is a great man, and walking together, because I wasn't about the male-female divide, it's about collaborating together for the greater good. And so, it was amazing. We kind of came up with this script, pulled all these amazing female crew together, and some male crew supported as well, and we kind of turned everything around just on our own in 3 weeks and got it done for International Women's Day. And it was funny because even getting PR and media and everything that comes with advertising, it was really hard. And I was still working full time, so we would have meetings at 9, 10 p.m. and working throughout the night. But we were fueled by, just this belief and what we were doing. And it came out, and then media wanted to get onto it, asking, what's the production company name? And, again, these things with hierarchies and labels, like who's the director, who's this, and what's the production company? I was like, no, it's freelancers. It's about freelance crew, freelance people, women, men getting together because of this message that we want to share. And so I think it was a bit awkward for them, because usually, agencies and production companies, they want to win awards. That's why they do these sort of freebie jobs. And it's just like, cool, they've won an award for this, cause. And I was like, nope, it's Australian TV film crew coming together for this gender equality. And so it was amazing. It happened really quick, but we had such a great time on the shoot. Everyone volunteered their time. And it was even funny because we did get some support from the agency I was working at and the director's production company. But even then, it was all about the awards for them, all the glory. And I was like, it's not about that. And I think that actually pushed me to then quit my full-time job and then go freelance. So that was the fire that was kind of life-changing, because I was like, I don't need to be behind a big corporation or go, the highway. I can kind of do this on my own. And it gave me the courage to do that. And just amazing crew out there who are willing to support great causes and support you and believe in you and what you do. So that sort of was the fire or the Kickstarter for many other projects that I have done since then. And every single one I've been so proud of. A lot of them which, I share publicly, whereas previously I'd do a whole bunch of productions, and not none of them, but very few I would share as part of who I am, because like you said, it's an expression of who you are. And so, I've been really, really grateful to have projects come to me, directors and other creatives come to me with projects, because they know what I stand for. And so, these last 5 years have been about, crafting and opening up about who it is that you are and what are you standing for? What are you trying to say in this world? You've got one opportunity, one chance, and I think it's really important to line it up with what you believe in. So that's one thing, that's one small spot that I can share with you.
let's go the opposite route.
Oh no!
You don't have to name names, but I'm sure that you've had some nightmares that you've had to deal with. And you still have to manage it. You still have to be a producer. You have to have some objectivity. You still have to serve people, because that's what you do. That's what I do, is I serve and make sure that the client gets what they want, and that everybody's satisfied with the experience. But sometimes that is just a bumpy, terrible, horrible ride. Yeah.
There are also many projects that come to mind. Unfortunately, I will not name any names because that's the industry.
They know who they are. You don't have to name their names.
Yeah. If you're listening, you know who you are. But I don't have any grudges or anything. I think they're always good learning experience. But I think the key thing, rather than naming a particular project and what happened, that I have experienced on many projects is, the ego is always a big one, the big egos in the game. I find it, obviously, the larger the production is, and obviously the more personalities and people's own agendas come into play, that makes it really hard as a producer. I mean, that is your role to manage all of this, but it's tricky, especially with the discrepancy with people's roles and what they take from it. Bullying is a really big thing in our culture, in film, TV, in advertising, and I've seen it. I've seen it all, I feel. I mean, I probably haven't seen it all, but I don't want to see the rest of it. But yeah, I do find it interesting, let's say, that you're based in Vietnam, aren't you, Mark? Are you?
Yes.
Yeah. In Asian cultures, you probably know this whole showing face, and it's interesting even in advertising and film. Who gets the Golden Globe or the glory, but no one ever knows what happens behind the scenes. And that's something that I still am trying to, I guess, work out how we can be more transparent. I think we're in a time for transparency, and we see that in different industries. People are not calling people out. I mean, yes, calling people out, but also calling people in for a conversation. Quite often on big ads with big budgets and whatnot, there's a lot more at stake, and then people get mistreated. The pressure that people are on, it's just it's not what's the word I'm looking for, but it's kind of disrespectful, I guess, to human beings and their time and their energy and their craft. I mean, you're probably seeing it all over in Hollywood now with the crew on strike, but I think this stuff, it just can't keep going on. It's not sustainable, it's not respectable, and I don't know, it's just not healthy. We want a healthy industry, we want a healthy, happy, thriving industry, and to do that, you've got to take care of the people, and you've got to listen to the people who don't maybe have that, big name that are going to be going to all the awards, I think anyway, this is obviously my personal values and what I believe, but you know a lot about a person's character, and you can translate that across to a company or brand by the way they treat the people on the bottom rank. And but in our big corporation world, you don't see that. And so that was what I also was trying with Beside Not Behind, is showing what's also behind the scenes. And you can interview anybody that was on that set, and they can tell you exactly how they feel, and they all felt the same way. Whereas I've worked on shows where if you ask the crew, and of course it's this code of silence, I'm not going to say anything because I'm scared of losing my job or not getting on to the next one. But it's around, it exists, it still exists, and that's probably why I these days choose to be in smaller productions or on productions where I can choose and build the crew. Because that's really important. At the end of the day, yes, you're making this beautiful piece of film, we're sharing this message with the world, but if you can't even do that within the people who are making it, I mean, that is a massive problem there, and I have a real issue with that. So,
well, it's brilliant that you went freelance, because it's much easier to say no and pick and choose and not have that big engine behind you forcing you into situations that are fraught with difficulty and don't align with your moral standards.
Yeah.
You're listening to The Purenow Show, a creative podcast for creatives presented by Balance. And I'm curious too, as we started this conversation, as a woman of color, as you mentioned, what has been your experience coming up through the ranks of developing your career, and how has that offered some opportunities, and at the same time, where have there been some disadvantages for you where perhaps you weren't taking as seriously as you would like to? I mean, you are obviously a bursting personality. I mean, you're just blam. You're just all light all the time, which is great. And we need more people that are just effervescent. You got to put sunglasses on to hang out with you.
That's right.
But I'm wondering, though, as you came up through the industry, what experiences you were faced with and how you managed that and overcame potential adversity just because of your gender, for that matter.
The adversities, I feel, it's so hard because you just evolve as a human being and you learn how to respond to things. And at the end of the day, you know, I've had adversity and backlash from all sorts and types of situations and people, you know. It's not just, you know, the typical white male, older man. I've also, with women as well, you know, coming up. I mean, if you're, a young woman listening to this, I mean, you can get it from women, older women as well. They've got a chip on their shoulder. It's a tough fight, I think. But I think upon reflection, you know, you get those backlashes. And for me, as an Enneagram type 2, an ENFJ, whatever, all these personality things, but like I'm quite, wear my heart on my shoulder and quite receptive and can be sensitive. And, you know, you get that messaging of, you know, you learn to toughen up, just toughen up, like stop crying, stop doing this. And, you know, I've been told by many seniors to do that, and how else am I going to survive in this industry? And then I look at I'm looking for role models as a young person. I still now in my mid-30s, you know, looking for role models. And I think you see what's out there and you question yourself, like, is that the kind of person that I want to look up to or become? And if it's not out there, like, who do you want to become? And I think going internally and asking yourself, if it doesn't exist out there, then as somebody who can guide you or mentor you, and I'm mentoring a fean young people at the moment, and they are asking the same things, and they're in a totally different climate to we are, you know, having grown up in completely digital land. But I mean, all these experiences, I'm just constantly, it's that constant questioning yourself over and over again, like, am I doing what's right for me and best for me at this time? And what am I learning from this situation? So regardless of whether it's in the career or in life, I think that's something that we all question. I don't think you ever get to a stage where you know it all. Like, even chatting to my 71-year-old dad, is just like, you know, the older I get, the more I realize I don't know. And I think that's a beautiful place to be. And then you're constantly learning. I didn't really answer your question, but yeah, sure, there's been challenges. There's been, it's been hard. You know, people assuming, you know, as a, you know, Asian female, you're always like the assistant, and you know, you're not the producer, like, you know, presumptions like that, of course. But I think you just learn to block those voices out. I think that's just like, that's the thing. It's like you learn to discern who you want to listen to and what you want to listen to. And it's hard when you're younger because you just, you know, you understand that you're not experienced enough and you're trying to listen and gauge advice from everybody. Sometimes you're putting your heart out there and then you're getting wrong advice, or like, you know, the advice that's not good for your growth. But you learn that. You learn that, and sometimes the hard way, sometimes the long way. But then you get these amazing people that come into your life. And I'm telling and my production assistant right now, I'm like, when they come into your life, you gotta snatch onto that, you know? Grab onto that opportunity. There are beautiful souls out there, and a lot of it is intuition as well. Like, who is going to be in your inner circle and growing you as a person, and not just in your career. I think it's really important, because we often quite divide, I think, the career and the personal, but I think it's all interwoven, you know, it all affects each other. It's immersive. So I think, listen in on that. And so I've just like been coming off a conversation with her now, and I'm like, you have a voice, and it's okay to listen to it. You don't need sometimes, I mean, it's important to listen to those who've lived down that road, but we're also, as I said, society is growing and evolving all the time. And so trust that inner voice. And even if somebody who's 40, 60 years experience and telling you this is the way it's been done, it's okay to question it. It's okay. It's okay to also take on their feedback and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's up to you, and you're carving your own path. So I think it's important to be okay with yourself and trust yourself. So that's the advice that I am sharing with the younger generation that I'm sort of mentoring at the moment. But yeah, it's something that I'm still learning and still growing as well.
We're on a bit of a trajectory here as a species, as an industry. It's pretty hard at this point because we were thrown this incredible curveball and had to make some massive adjustments to be able to accommodate it, which we're still not. And this is just the first curveball of many to come down the road, I would imagine. But it has also set certain things into place that accelerated how we create content. Even though we were on this path prior to COVID with doing like virtual productions and everything being digitally created, now the choice was taken away, essentially. And we had to really tighten up our game and manufacture this virtual world so we could continue to produce content for our clients and deliver the goods. And even during the toughest of times, online retailers became bigger and needed to do more marketing, and the train didn't come to a crashing halt in the marketing world. A lot of other things did, but people were still doing business. So we've had to adapt quickly and be able to articulate this to clients and let them know their new options. And there's also a different mindset. We're just inundated with content and data continuously. It's just nuts, really. It's nuts. What do you see transpiring like over the next, let's say, 5 years, keep it kind of tight, as we navigate through this condition and start to come out on the other side? Expectations have changed, process has changed, things have changed. So where do you see this going? Social media is the driving element for content creation, and it's more about a lot versus quality sometimes. And the clients just want to pump a lot of stuff out and inundate their target market with a barrage of messaging. What do you think can be done to kind of pull the reins back in, ensure that clients are still going for the quality messaging, going for the good narrative? You can still produce things pretty cheaply now because of the digital age. It really does, when budgets are reduced, there's been kind of this leveling where, yes, you can produce something for less and still have high quality. And now people are also used to, shooting things with their phones. We're used to not seeing super high end and being happy with the narrative versus the quality of the production. So how do you think this is going to play out for you going forward as a producer when you get back into doing that full time again, and how you're going to work with your clients to help them achieve the results that they want?
Now, am I thinking about the client, or am I thinking about the people that are receiving it? I guess it's both, really, if it's working well. I think you can't stop the quantity and amount of content, and you're always, I think most clients will probably think, even working at Vice, when I was working there, and just the deliverables, it was just like on every single platform, and it was a nightmare as a post producer, and they're just trying to reach every single market. But there's, where do I see it going? Where do I hope to see it going? I think where I hope clients can really tap into, and I think even myself with my own projects, is doing more work understanding your niche audience and understanding what they really want. And that, I think, will inform the content and quantity and the quality. If you're not really understanding your audience's behaviors and actions, and I know there's like a whole industry for this and part of the market research, let's say, I think, then your challenge with just making something that's general for the mainstream audience, and you're not really getting it right. But I think people, as a audience member myself, and I don't want to use this word consumer because I really dislike it, because my art is all about getting people to participate and engage with it rather than just consume. But we're all connected by the internet, so we're consuming in some way. But you're looking for interesting, new, direct messaging that's important and personal to you. I think everyone is seeking that. And so out of the barrage of information that's out there, people are seeking, personal things that connect with them. And so the brands and the products that I see succeeding are hitting that. And there is a universal thing that ties us all together, like as people. And so again, the creative content that I consume, that I'm inspired by, I think there is a universal message, and I hope that is the case for lots of things that we need to, as a society, unite together, to bond together. And I think if clients can really listen in on that and also realize that they are part of either the social change that's going to be good for this world, or otherwise they're adding to the noise and the clutter, and it's not going to it's going to have a negative impact about the state of the world. Yes, corporate social responsibility, that word. But I think I didn't really answer your question, but I've just rambled on, but I think the big question is, am I excited about the future? Am I about content, or am I not? I am excited. I am concerned. But I have hope. I have hope about the quality. I'm always hopeful. Do I get disappointed all the time? Yeah, sure I do. But I'm still hopeful. The clients, there's good people out there doing good work. Creatives, on client side, whatnot. And I think those tribes have to stick together, because there's going to be a lot more noise out there, so.
Well,
anyway.
That's the thing too. It's like, how does the cream rise when, the ocean is filled with garbage?
Yeah.
How does anything penetrate the garbage? It can't get through the garbage. There's so much garbage. And it's like, even your campaign, beside versus behind, how many people is that really hitting? It's a fantastic project. It probably was more impactful for those that were participating in its development than the audience, the limited audience that got to see the final result. How do we create projects like that are more universal, that are getting more global? Because we're in this world now where there are no territorial boundaries. Where it's being seen, how it's being seen, getting to that larger audience, placement, all these particular aspects of getting eyes on something are even more challenging now, because of just the sheer number of things that people can be looking at. And people are looking at a lot of, cats climbing up on curtains. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Everybody wants to look at a good cat video once in a while, but that's just a temporary distraction. It's not getting them to think about the bigger problems that, some of this information is trying to address and bring to light. And it's pretty tough to change people's minds right now. We've really become entrenched in competition and opinion and stories, other people's stories. It's really tough. But you're a fighter in the sense that you're not willing to stop and not have your voice and not assist others in having that voice and their ability to create content that moves people, that makes people think about things. Which brings me to my last question. If you could not do any of the things that you're doing now, what would you do? You couldn't do any of them, not your podcast, not the producing, nothing. You have to start over again from something else. You have to do something else. What would you want to do with your life?
Do what you're doing, Mark. Talking to creatives all around the world. That's a pretty cool job. Gosh, yeah, it's so funny. What else would I be doing? I don't know. This is a good question. I've been asked this question for a very long time, and I'm a bit stumped. I don't know. I'm just out in the world, like creating community. That's just all I do. That's actually literally all I do in whatever form. It doesn't have to be creative. I'm running a neighborhood party, a few weeks time, I'm organizing that, getting all the musicians and DJs together in my neighborhood and organizing that. So I think in whatever thing that I'm doing, I'm just bringing people together. That's just my thing. It doesn't have to be media. It doesn't have to be producing. It can be anything, but whatever it is, I just love bringing people together. My mum says I'm just a natural party socialite person. If she's like, if all you could do is talk to people every day of your life and get paid for it, she's like, you'd be in a dream. That's what she said to me from a very young age. And I was like, yeah, pretty much.
Well, that's the description of a perfect politician if they weren't a politician.
Yes.
No, if that's the ideology is, oh my God, you love people and
Yeah.
you want to facilitate supporting them at their fundamental basic needs and bring them together, which
Yeah.
is the antithesis of what that has turned out to be, of course.
Yeah, imagine if I went for politics. Oh God.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. When I say if you could do something else completely, I mean, it could be a total fantasy, of course. You know, like Plato said, whoever's going to be the president of any country does not want that job. They are forced to take that job because they're the most qualified and they've been trained properly and have the correct temperament. Nobody who wants any of these leadership jobs should be in these jobs. Someone like
Yeah.
you, who would not want
No.
to be impositioned with the burden of such responsibility, would
Yeah.
do an incredible job, of course, because that's just the very nature of you without applying this whole ridiculous mass leadership role to it. But I would want you as the person that I would look up to and say, yeah, let's do that. Let's champion like each other and people and make art and have fun and communicate and love and all those good things.
Yeah, totally. Having fun in some sort of fun role, that's definitely my thing. I did want to be a clown doctor for a very long time.
Say that one more time. You wanted to be a what?
A clown doctor. Well, a clown doctor, in the clowning industry, clown artist. I actually
You mean
had some
like Patch Adams, like the movie with Robin Williams? Is that what you're talking about? Putting on
Yeah.
the red nose and making little children laugh and everybody want to just have a good time?
Yeah. Not necessarily the red nose, but in some form, shape or form, just bringing joy, having fun. You know, get people to loosen up a little, you know? Everyone's just so serious all the time. The world is so serious for a reason, but just also adulting, just getting, being an adult. I'm like, everyone's so serious all the time. Why?
They lost their being a kid
Yeah.
because life became serious, like you just said.
Yeah.
Children are not judging each other. I high five every kid, say Sin Chow every day, all day. It's so fun. And they know that I'm one of them. So there's this instant camaraderie. And I do find that as a common thing here in Vietnam, that, it's a very sweet culture and people are very genuinely graceful and kind. And they haven't lost that childlike nature. And I'm not talking about childish, childlike. Even though some would say that I'm childish, but that's fine too. No, that's fine. That's all part of the package. But I do think the whole idea of being a clown is to strip away all this perception of importance and paying attention to yourself and really paying attention to other people and being really selfless. A clown is selfless, not selfish. So I appreciate that mindset and that even just the whole concept around entertaining others.
We all love entertainment, whether we engage in it or not, it's there. So that's probably what I would do.
I think that's very cool. Liv, it's been super fun chatting with you, and I really appreciate the fact that you were candid about your experiences and to continually empower others to explore their own creativity and bring new happiness to themselves.
Thanks, Mark.
If you enjoyed the Purenow show, you can check out more episodes at balancestudio.tv or anywhere fine podcasts are broadcast. Purenow is produced and engineered by HaiHa Dang and directed by Dong Wun Guan. Thanks so much for watching.